The night on the human colony was silent, but not peaceful. The steel walls of the lower decks echoed with the hum of broken machines and leaking pipes, and Daniel walked alone through the narrow path as he always did after his shift. He was a simple worker, nothing special in a world where humans and aliens shared the same space, but never the same trust. His boots made soft sounds against the metal floor, and the air smelled of rust and oil. He thought he was alone, but then he heard it, a faint whisper, a sound that did not belong in the empty corridor. He froze, his heart beating faster than before, and he followed the sound into the shadows. There in the corner, behind a pile of broken crates, he saw her, a girl, not human, her skin pale, like silver, and her eyes glowing softly, as if carrying light from another world. Her clothes torn, and her breathing heavy. She looked small and fragile, but also sharp, like someone who had run far from danger. Daniel stepped closer without a word, and she raised her hand as if to defend herself, but her strength was fading, and she almost fell when she tried to move. Daniel caught her before she hit the ground, and for a moment, he felt the strange coldness of her skin against his hand. "Who are you?" he asked, but she did not answer. Instead, she looked at him with fear in her glowing eyes. Her lips moved slowly, and she whispered, "Please do not let them find me." Daniel was confused. He wanted to ask more, but heavy boots echoed from the other side of the corridor. Voices of soldiers rang out, rough and commanding. They were searching for someone. Daniel understood at once that it was her, the alien girl hiding in the dark. His mind raced. He could step away, let them find her, and he would be safe. Or he could hide her and put his own life in danger. Before he even thought it through, his body moved. He pulled her behind the crates, pressed her small form against the shadows, and placed a finger to his lips, telling her to stay silent. The soldiers marched past, their armor shining under the weak lights, their eyes scanning every corner. Daniel held his breath. He could hear his own heartbeat, and he could feel her trembling against his arm. But the soldiers passed by, and the sound of boots slowly faded into the distance. When the silence returned, the girl looked at him with tears in her eyes. She whispered, "Why did you help me? You do not know who I am." Daniel felt strange hearing her voice, soft like music, but broken by fear. He shook his head and answered, "Maybe I do not know who you are, but I know what fear looks like, and you do not deserve to be dragged away like a criminal." She lowered her gaze, and for a moment he thought she might cry again, but instead she spoke in a quiet tone. "They will not stop. They will keep hunting me, and if they catch me, everything will be lost. Not only for me, but for you and all your people." Her words sent a chill through Daniel. He wanted to ask what she meant, what secret she carried, but she was too weak, her breath uneven, her body shaking, as if she had not eaten for days. He looked around the empty corridor, then made his choice. He would not leave her here. He lifted her gently, carrying her weight, though she felt lighter than any human, and he began walking deeper into the lower decks where no soldier dared to go. Every step he took, questions filled his mind. Who was this girl? Why were soldiers after her? What danger did she carry within her silence? Yet when he looked at her face, resting against his shoulder, he felt something else, a strange pull, a connection he could not explain. He had seen many aliens in the colony, but none had looked so human in their fear. None had spoken with such desperation. He reached an old maintenance room and placed her on a broken bench. The dim light flickered above them. She opened her eyes again and whispered, "My name is Lyra, and I cannot stay here." Daniel leaned closer, his voice low. "Why are they after you? What have you done?" She shook her head slowly. "It is not what I have done. It is what I carry, something they fear, something they want. And if they get it, they will use it against all of you." Before Daniel could ask more, noise echoed from the corridors. Again the sound of orders, the sound of weapons. He knew the soldiers were searching, still closer than before. He looked at the door, then back at her, and he realized his life had just changed. He was now part of something far bigger than himself, and the choice he made tonight would decide not only her fate, but maybe the fate of all humans in the colony. Daniel sat in the old maintenance room, his back against the wall, and his eyes fixed on the girl called Lyra. Her breathing was uneven, and her silver-like skin glowed Faintly under the broken light, she looked fragile as if she could disappear at any moment, yet her words still echoed in his mind, something they fear, something they want. He tried to make sense of it, but nothing seemed clear. He had never seen a creature like her before, not in the markets, not in the streets, not even in the restricted alien zones, and the way she spoke carried weight, like she was not just another runaway, but someone carrying a truth too heavy for her small frame. He reached into his bag, pulled out a flask of water, and held it to her lips. She drank slowly as if every drop was a treasure, and then whispered, "Why did you not hand me to them?" Daniel looked at her and felt his chest tighten. "Because you asked me not to, and because I saw how scared you were, and I know what it feels like to be powerless." Lyra tilted her head, her glowing eyes searching his face like she was trying to read his soul, and then she spoke again. "Humans are strange. You fight even when you should not. You risk even when it brings pain, and yet that is why they fear you." Daniel frowned and asked, "Who fears us, and why would they hunt you if you are not their enemy?" Her gaze lowered and her voice trembled as she spoke. "I am not a soldier, and I am not a spy. I was born with something inside me, a code written into my blood. It is not a weapon, but it can be used as one. My people discovered it long ago, and they tried to control me, to turn me into a tool of power. I ran because I did not want to be used like that, and now they call me traitor." Daniel felt his hands tighten into fists. He did not understand everything, but he knew enough. She was carrying something that both sides wanted, something that could shift the fragile balance between humans and aliens. The sound of boots rang faintly in the distance again. The soldiers had not stopped searching. Daniel moved closer, his voice low. "If they catch you, what will they do?" She looked at him with fear in her eyes. "They will break me apart, take the code from me, and then use it to enslave your people, to keep you under their control forever." Daniel felt his heart pound louder than the boots outside. He thought of the colony, of the children playing in the narrow halls, of the tired workers like himself, and of the fragile peace that kept humans under alien rule. If what she said was true, then she carried both a curse and a chance of freedom. Lyra lowered her head, her silver hair falling across her face. "I cannot stay here," she whispered. "You helped me, but if they find me with you, they will kill you too." Daniel shook his head firmly. "You think I will just walk away now, after seeing this, after knowing the truth? No, I will not let them take you." She looked at him with wide eyes as if she could not believe his words. Her lips trembled, and for a moment her face softened. She whispered softly, "Why would you risk everything for me?" Daniel hesitated, then answered, "Because maybe this is bigger than me. Maybe this is about all of us, and maybe someone has to stand up even when it makes no sense." For a moment silence filled the room, broken only by the hum of old machines and the faint echoes of soldiers moving through the decks outside. Lyra closed her eyes as if holding back tears, and then she spoke again. "There is something you must know. I made a bargain, once a desperate one, to escape them. I promised to give myself up if they spared the colony, but now they want more, and they will not stop until I am theirs." Daniel felt the weight of her words crash into him. She had sacrificed herself to protect strangers like him, and yet here she was hunted, cornered, and alone. He leaned closer, his voice a whisper. "What if you do not have to give yourself up? What if we find another way?" She shook her head slowly. "You do not understand. They will keep coming. They will use your own leaders against you. Some humans already work with them, and if they think you are hiding me, they will betray you without hesitation." Daniel clenched his jaw, anger burning inside him. He had always known there was corruption in the colony, but hearing it from her made it feel like a knife twisting deeper. Still, he refused to let that be the end. The noise outside grew louder, the boots now closer, and the radios crackling with commands. Daniel grabbed her hand, pulling her up gently. "We cannot stay here. We have to move." She struggled to stand, her legs weak, but she nodded, trusting him, as they slipped out of the maintenance room and into the dark tunnels of the lower decks. Shadows stretched across the walls, pipes hissed steam, and the smell of rust filled the air. Daniel led the way, keeping her close behind him. Every sound of soldiers in the distance pushing him faster as they moved. She whispered, "Daniel, if they catch me, promise me something." He turned his head. What promise? She took a deep breath, her glowing eyes fierce, even through her fear. "Promise me you will not let them take me alive. Promise me you will end it before they use me against your people." Daniel froze, the weight of her words hitting him like a storm. He looked at her and saw not just fear but determination. A girl ready to sacrifice herself for strangers, for humans she barely knew. His chest tightened, and he shook his head. "I will not make that promise, because I will not let them take you at all." For a long moment they walked in silence, the sound of boots chasing behind them growing closer. But in that silence, something changed between them. She looked at him not as a stranger, not as a human, but as someone who had chosen to stand with her, even when the cost was his own life. And in her glowing eyes, he saw something he had not expected: trust. The tunnel stretched endlessly ahead, and Daniel felt the weight of each step heavier than the last. His heart pounded, not only from the chase, but from the truth. Lyra had spoken. She carried something inside her, something powerful enough to enslave his people, and yet she had chosen to run instead of obeying her own kind. The air was thick with dust, and the pipes above then dripped water that echoed like faint footsteps in the silence behind them. Soldiers moved closer, their voices sharp like knives cutting through the air. Daniel tightened his grip on Lyra's hand, urging her forward, though he could feel her body weakening with every passing moment. They stopped at a hidden chamber deep under the colony, where old machines lay broken and forgotten. Daniel helped her sit on a steel beam, her silver hair falling across her face, her breathing heavy. He wanted to give her comfort, but he also needed answers. He looked at her with steady eyes and asked, "Tell me the full truth. No more hiding, no more half words. What is this code inside you? What is the bargain you made?" Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and she whispered in a tone that trembled with both fear and shame, "I carry the pattern of life itself, Daniel. It is written into me by those who came before me. It is knowledge that can heal worlds or destroy them. They wanted me to give it up, to bind it into weapons and chains. I refused, so they branded me traitor. I ran to protect it, but I knew they would hunt me, and I thought if I offered myself to spare your people, they would stop." Daniel shook his head, his voice rising with anger. "You mean you gave up your own freedom for a promise that they would never keep? You trusted them with your life, and now they will take more than that. They will take everything." Lyra looked down, tears glistening in her glowing eyes. "I was desperate, Daniel. I had no choice. I thought maybe one life, mine, would be enough to protect millions. But they are never satisfied. Now they will use your leaders against you. They will break every bargain until nothing is left." Daniel felt fury burn in his chest, not at her, but at the cruelty of those who hunted her. He had lived under alien rule long enough to know how they twisted words and promises, but hearing her story made it more real than ever. He moved closer, kneeling in front of her, his voice softer but firm. "Listen to me. You are not alone anymore. I will not let them take you, and I will not let them use you against us." Lyra lifted her head, staring into his eyes, searching for doubt, but all she saw was determination, stronger than fear. Sound of boots grew louder again, echoing down the tunnels. Daniel cursed under his breath. They had to move, but Lyra placed a weak hand on his arm and whispered, "Daniel, if we keep running, we will both die. They are too many, and they will never stop unless I surrender myself." He felt his blood freeze at her words, and he shook his head violently. "No, I will not let you give yourself up." She closed her eyes, tears slipping down her pale skin, and whispered, "You do not understand. If I do not give myself up, they will punish your people. They will starve the colony, and your children will pay the price." Daniel clenched his fists, his mind torn between rage and helplessness. Her words stabbed deep, because he knew she spoke truth. The aliens had power over the colony. They controlled supplies, water, food, and air. They could crush the humans without lifting a single weapon, and yet he could not accept the thought of letting her go to be broken and used like a tool. He stood tall, his voice trembling with both fear and fire. "Then we fight, Lyra. We fight for you and for all of us, because Giving up is no life at all. For the first time a faint smile touched her lips, though her eyes still shone with sadness. She whispered, "Humans are strange. Daniel, you are willing to die for someone you barely know, and yet that is why there is still hope in you." Daniel reached out, helping her rise again, though her body shook with weakness. He kept her steady together. They moved deeper into the tunnels, but the voices followed closer. The soldiers knew they were near. The chase carried them into the old reactor chambers, where the air was thick with heat, and the glow of failing lights painted the walls in eerie colors. Daniel pulled Lyra behind broken machinery, whispering, "Stay low," as the soldiers entered, their heavy boots striking against the steel floor. The leader barked orders, his voice echoing like thunder. Daniel held his breath, his heart racing. He knew they could not keep hiding forever. Sooner or later they would be found. Lyra touched his arm, her voice so soft he almost missed it. "Daniel, if they find us, promise me this time that you will end it. I cannot let them use me." He turned his head, his jaw set, and his eyes fierce. "I will not make that promise, because I will not let it happen. I will not let you be their weapon." She looked at him with both pain and gratitude, her glowing eyes shimmering with a light that seemed fragile yet unbroken. Soldiers spread through the chamber, their weapons ready, their scanners searching the broken walls. Daniel pulled Lyra closer, whispering, "Follow me." And then he moved silently through the shadows, every sound threatening to give them away. Sweat dripped down his back, his muscles tense with fear and focus. He led her toward a narrow maintenance shaft at the far end of the chamber, but just as they reached it, a beam of light from a scanner swept across the floor, stopping inches from their feet. Daniel grabbed her hand, pulled her into the shaft, and they crawled through the narrow space, the sound of shouts exploding behind them as the soldiers realized their prey had slipped away again. The shaft was dark and suffocating, every movement slow and painful. Lyra struggled, her breath shallow, but Daniel pushed forward, dragging her along when she faltered, until finally they reached the other side and fell into another chamber, this one quieter, abandoned, with only the sound of dripping water echoing around them. Daniel lay on the ground for a moment, breathing heavily, then turned to her, his voice quiet but filled with fire. "Listen to me, Lyra, no matter what bargain you made, no matter what promise you gave them, I will not let you go. I will not let them take you, because you are more than their weapon, you are more than their fear, you are hope." Lyra looked at him, her eyes wide and her lips trembling. She wanted to speak, but her voice broke and only tears came. She leaned against him, her body weak, but her spirit touched by his words. In that moment, a bond stronger than any bargain was formed, and though the soldiers still hunted them, and danger still pressed close, they had chosen to stand together against the darkness. Daniel and Lyra moved through the shadowed corridors of the colony, the air thick with tension, every sound echoing in the steel tunnels, their breaths quick and shallow. The soldiers were still following their trail, relentless and unforgiving. Daniel held Lyra's hand, guiding her through narrow paths and maintenance shafts, every step a test of patience and courage, every corner a potential trap. He could feel her trembling, but also her determination. She was not just running, she was planning, surviving with him, and with him alone. They reached the abandoned control room, where old screens flickered weakly and wires hung like vines from the ceiling. Daniel pressed her against the wall, whispering, "Stay here. I will check the entrance." The room smelled of oil and rust, and fear lingered like a shadow. Daniel moved forward, his eyes scanning every inch of the doorway. The sound of heavy boots grew louder, and a human officer stepped into view, his face familiar yet cold. He raised his weapon, aimed, and smiled. Daniel froze for a moment. The officer was supposed to be on his side, but his eyes told another story. The officer spoke harshly, "Daniel, we know you are hiding." Her hand, her head dropped slightly as Daniel realized betrayal had found them. Humans, too, were against them, some for fear, some for greed, and some for orders. Daniel clenched his fists, his anger rising. The officer advanced. "Do not try anything, Daniel, or you will regret it." Lyra stepped forward, though her body was weak, her voice steady. "Please stop. You do not understand what they will do if they take me." The officer laughed. "They understand perfectly. Young girl, you carry what can destroy your people, and you will hand it over or die. Daniel felt fury burn inside him. He stepped in front of her. I will not let you take her, no matter what you threaten, no matter what you promise. The officer hesitated, his weapon shaking slightly. Then he barked to the soldiers surround them, the chamber filled with men and women, trained to obey, now ready to strike. Daniel looked at Lyra, her eyes glowing with fear and trust. He whispered, "Stay behind me, I will not let them hurt you." She nodded, her body tense, every muscle ready for what was coming. And Daniel realized that this was more than escape. Now this was a stand, a moment where courage had to outweigh fear. The soldiers moved forward, weapons raised. Daniel dodged quickly, using the shadows and walls to hide Lyra from sight. He moved like someone who had no training, yet instinct guided him. Every step, every motion precise, his heart racing with adrenaline, and his mind calculating 100 possibilities. At once Lyra followed quietly, her small hands clutching his jacket, every movement a prayer that they would survive together. Leader of the soldiers shouted commands, his voice echoing in the chamber, fire and light bouncing off metal walls. Daniel took a deep breath, then charged forward, surprising them. No one expected him to resist. He ducked a swing, grabbed a rifle from a soldier, and used it to block another attack. Lyra crouched behind him, trembling, but ready to move when needed. The room was chaos, noise, light, and fear mixing into a storm of survival. Daniel realized that their bond made them stronger than any number of soldiers. Every fear and every doubt melted into determination amidst the struggle. Daniel heard Lyra whisper something urgent. "Take the code." Daniel paused. What code? She gestured to her chest. The genetic pattern hidden in her blood, the thing the aliens wanted. He realized then that they could not let it fall into the wrong hands. He stepped back, shielding her while using the moment to push the soldiers back. The officer yelled fire at him. Now Daniel moved with a speed fueled by desperation. He grabbed Lyra and ran toward the ventilation shaft. He knew it would not hold forever, but it was the only chance they had. The soldiers shouted and fired, but Daniel pressed forward, dragging Lyra into the narrow passage. The metal walls scraped against their bodies, but he did not stop, not even when pain shot through his arms. In the cramped tunnel, Lyra gasped, her breathing ragged, but she spoke. "Daniel, listen to me. I can help you. I know how to stop them." She touched his arm, and he felt warmth and power surge from her small body, her glowing eyes brighter than before. Daniel nodded. "We need a plan," she whispered. "Yes, we need to trick them, and we need to be fast." The ventilation led them under the colony, into a forgotten sector, a place humans had abandoned long ago. Machinery rusted and broken, but it gave them cover. Daniel helped her climb over pipes and through dark corridors, each movement silent and careful. Behind them, shouts and heavy boots marked the soldiers' pursuit, but Daniel felt something new: hope. Finally, they reached the old reactor control center, a place no one entered for decades. Daniel pressed Lyra against the wall and whispered, "Stay here. I will distract them." She nodded, her eyes glowing with trust and fear. Daniel stepped into the open chamber, facing the soldiers, their weapons raised and anger flashing in their eyes. He lifted his hands, showing he meant no harm, but his mind raced for a way to outsmart them. Officer stepped forward. "Daniel, do not make this harder than it has to be. Hand her over." Now Daniel shook his head. "Never. She is not yours, and I will not let you use her against my people." The officer sneered and raised his weapon. Daniel noticed the weak support beams above, and an idea sparked in his mind. He lunged to the side, dodging a shot, kicking over a control panel. Sparks flew and wires cracked. The soldiers hesitated momentarily. The old reactor systems flickered and groaned. Daniel grabbed a loose pipe and swung it, knocking the weapon from a soldier's hands. Then, using speed and wit, he led them into a narrow corridor where their numbers counted for nothing. One by one, they tripped over broken machinery, stumbled, and Daniel pushed forward until finally the soldiers were trapped in the open chamber, unable to follow him without risking falling themselves. He ran back to Lyra, taking her hand, and together they moved through the hidden paths toward the surface. As they climbed out of the dark underground tunnels, Daniel felt her small hand squeeze tightly. She whispered, "Thank you, Daniel, I thought I was lost." He smiled. "We are not lost yet." And though danger was still near, and though the aliens and traitors still hunted them, Daniel felt a surge of hope, courage, and trust, a bond that no weapon or bargain could break. Together, they were ready for what would come next, and though the confrontation had tested every ounce of their strength, it had also shown them that together they could face anything. Daniel and Lyra emerged from the shadows of the underground tunnels into the faint glow of the colony. Above, the air was cold and sharp, and every sound of distant footsteps reminded them the soldiers were still searching. They paused for a moment, catching their breath. Her silver glowing eyes scanned the horizon, and Daniel felt the weight of responsibility settle heavier than ever before. He had promised to protect her, and now it was time to face what lay ahead. No more hiding, no more running, no more bargains that demanded her sacrifice. They moved through the upper decks, keeping to the abandoned maintenance corridors, avoiding patrols and surveillance cameras, every step careful, every breath measured. And then Lyra whispered, "Daniel, there's a place we can go, a safe haven where the code I carry will be secure and used to help both humans and aliens." She led him to an old laboratory, hidden behind a forgotten storage room, a place long abandoned but untouched by soldiers. The walls were lined with dusty equipment and broken consoles, but it was perfect, a place where they could plan and act without interference. Daniel helped her inside, and she collapsed onto a bench, her body weak from running and fear and stress. He knelt beside her, holding her hand, and whispered, "We are safe for now." She looked at him, her glowing eyes filled with gratitude and fear, and she spoke softly, "Daniel, I have something to do, something that will end this. I cannot stay hidden forever." He nodded. "I know, Lyra, and I will stand with you no matter what." She took a deep breath and placed her hands on the console, activating old systems. Her code glowed faintly on the screen's, patterns of light dancing across the walls. Daniel watched in awe as the knowledge she carried revealed itself not as a weapon, but as a cure for a disease that had silently spread among humans and aliens alike, a disease that threatened both species and had been used by some to gain control. The realization hit Daniel like a wave. This was why she was hunted. This was why the aliens wanted her. This was why she had made the desperate bargain. Her knowledge was not destruction, it was life, and those who sought to control her feared it, because power is never comfortable when it cannot be owned. She turned to him. "Daniel, we can save them all if we act now, if we release the code into the central systems." Daniel nodded, understanding the risk if the soldiers found them. Here the plan would fail and they could die. But he also knew there was no other choice. They could not let fear rule them. They could not let the past dictate the future. Together, they worked, moving through the lab, her hands guiding his as they input commands and activated old systems. The code spread slowly through the colony networks, and Daniel watched as screens flickered and lights blinked across the city. The disease that had held humans and aliens in fear began to fade, the monitors showing recovery signals and safety warnings. The sense of hope was overwhelming, but Daniel knew it was not over yet. The soldiers would still come, and the officers who betrayed them would not give up easily. A loud crash from the corridor made them freeze. The soldiers had found them at last, their weapons raised, and shouting echoed through the lab. Daniel stepped in front of Lyra, holding his hands up, showing defiance and courage. "You will not take her," he shouted, his voice carrying through the chamber. The soldiers hesitated for a moment, and then the leader stepped forward, pointing his weapon at Daniel. But in that instant, something incredible happened. The code Lyra carried began to interact with the colony systems and the automated defense drones activated, surrounding the soldiers, keeping them at bay. Daniel shielded Lyra and whispered, "Now go." She nodded, and together they moved toward the exit, using the chaos to escape. Chase continued through the upper decks, but every step the code healed and secured life in the colony, weakening the soldiers' resolve. Daniel and Lyra moved swiftly, ducking and weaving through the shadows, finally reaching the highest point of the colony, the observation deck where the stars spread endlessly. Before them she looked at him and whispered, "Daniel, we did it." He smiled the first time in hours, feeling exhaustion and triumph. Mixed together, "We did it, Lyra." And in that moment, they realized that the bond they had formed, the courage and trust they shared, had not only saved them, but had saved countless lives. The officer who had betrayed them appeared at the end of the deck, his weapon raised, but the automated drones moved between them, stopping him, unable to reach Daniel and Lyra. He looked at them, furious and defeated. "Daniel, step forward. Your bargains and threats mean nothing now. Your fear cannot control hope," he shouted, and the officer lowered his weapon, knowing defeat was inevitable. Lyra turned to Daniel, her eyes glowing softly. "Thank you for standing with me, for trusting me." He shook his head. "It was not just me, it was both of us. Your courage made this possible, and together we proved that even in the darkest moments, humanity and trust could shine brighter than fear and power." The colony below began to stabilize, people emerging from hiding, some still afraid, but others curious and hopeful, seeing the lights returning to the city, the disease slowly fading, the humans and aliens looking at each other differently. For the first time in decades, they realized there was hope for unity, not through bargains or fear, but through courage and trust. Daniel and Lyra watched silently, knowing their fight was over for now, and that what they had started would continue long after they were gone. Finally, Lyra turned to her, face soft and smiling. "Daniel, I thought I would always be hunted, but now I see there is a future, a choice and hope." He took her hand and squeezed it gently. Together, they looked out over the colony, the stars above them, endless and bright. Daniel whispered, "We will face whatever comes next together." And in that moment, the desperate bargain that once threatened destruction had become a story of survival, courage, and hope for all. And though danger would always exist, they knew that the greatest power of all was standing with someone you trust and believing in the future. The end.